Hi, it's Mike Keenan from KM Fitness. We're going to be doing a 3-day detox at the end of this week, and I just want to lay some groundwork as to what we're doing and why we're doing it, okay? So today is the first video just to lay some of that groundwork and to discuss some ideas to start a little bit of a conversation. Today I want to talk about perception, neurological effect of what we do, and the hormonal effect of what we do. Okay, so let's talk about scenario number one, and that's prolonged sitting. Now, our ancestors really didn't sit for any prolonged period of time unless two things were happening. One, it was very, very inclement weather, and they couldn't go outside, and B, there was no food available. So they had to conserve energy. Okay, so what would be their method of doing it? What's going on in their body? What's the neurological effect and the hormonal effect of prolonged sitting? Well, you'd start to decrease your lean mass. Lean mass is like the engine that burns within inside you. It's your metabolism, okay? So by breaking down your metabolic machinery, you in essence slow down metabolism. When you slow down metabolism, you facilitate the increase of stored body fat, okay? So most of us don't sit most of the day, but there's some of us who do. They sit in the car, they sit on the train, they sit at a desk all day long, and we're sending very strong neurological signals to our brain and nervous system that we're not moving, so therefore, based on our genetic history, maybe it's not safe to go outside, or maybe there's no food available. So we're really not much different than we were 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 years ago. So our genetics are basically the same, so our body's going to react the same to prolonged sitting. The other thing I want to talk to you about is chronic low-calorie diets. I don't mean going low calorie 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. I'm talking about on a long, persistent basis, weeks and months, going on very, very low calorie diets. And what would I consider a low calorie diet for anyone who's active? If you're a woman, if you're doing less than 1,200 calories a day, that's probably, I would consider that to be a low calorie diet. For men, it'd be under 1,500 calories. And these are just very generic numbers. You know, if there's a man who's 5'8" and 150 pounds, you can't compare him to a guy who's 6'6" and 220 pounds. All right, so these are just very generic numbers. What happens when we go on chronic low-calorie diets? Well, again, our body doesn't have enough energy to sustain us. Remember, lean mass is very metabolically expensive. It costs a lot of food to maintain and a lot of activity to maintain. You have to stimulate the muscle in order for it to grow. So when you go on chronic low-calorie diets, you're going to see a decrease in lean mass and an increase in the ability to store body fat. So it does exactly the opposite of what most people who go on low-calorie diets are trying to accomplish. They're trying to lose weight. Well, they end up losing weight, but they end up losing lean mass, and they end up facilitating a situation where you can increase your stored body fat. Now, I will say this. We do have people who are on different protocols with their physicians with regards to weight loss. That is between you and your physician. Here in a fitness facility, we talk about diet, we talk about exercise, we talk about lifestyle, we talk about sleep, restorative exercise. So we don't get into the chemical manipulation of the body. That's between your physician and yourself. So let me give you the scenario that I use to try to explain things, because I think a lot of people can relate to this example. And I'm going to jump to the other side. And let's talk about the squirrels in your neighborhood, and we're going to call him Rocky the squirrel. Okay, so Rocky has to make it through the winter. He can't survive without making some changes, because food, the availability of food goes down and down and down, and he's got to survive through the winter. And that process of surviving and slowing down their metabolism is called hibernation. Bears hibernate. There's even some primates that hibernate. We don't hibernate. So we don't have the same ability to do exactly what Rocky does, but it seems like some of us do have the ability to increase our stored body fat. So let's give you Rocky's scenario, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, here's July, and food is readily available for Rocky, and he's at a healthy amount of lean mass and a healthy amount of stored body fat. And, you know, he does pretty well through September, October, but sometime around November, okay, food starts to dry up a little bit. He starts to store a few nuts in his nest, but, you know, he doesn't have a big house like we have. He has a little nest, so he may be able to store a little bit of food. So here comes Rocky's stored body fat. And when the food starts to become relatively scarce, okay, so we have a decrease in food, a decrease in the amount of sunlight, and of course a decrease in activity because he's not out hunting and gathering because there's nothing to gather, okay, his activity level starts to go. So there's a little genetic switch that flips inside of Rocky, and all of a sudden he starts gaining weight. And his weight goes up and up and up and up, okay? And here's what happens to his food. It starts going down and down and down and down. So here we have a very unique situation. His body fat goes up, but the amount of food he consumes and the activity level goes down. It seems kind of contrary, okay? So let's take Rocky out here. Now it's January, February. He's living off that stored body fat, and it starts to come down. And he's surviving okay. And then somewhere around spring, things start to come out. Food starts to become available. And here's Rocky's food. It starts coming back up to a baseline, and his percent body fat comes back into a baseline too. Okay? So it's a very unique situation where with a decrease in activity, decrease in food, and decrease in sunlight, that Rocky starts to gain stored body fat. And what do? We do prolonged sitting, we do low-calorie diets, and what happens to us? We end up increasing our ability to store fat as well. All right? Now, the question always comes up, what happens if Rocky's like us and we can keep him fed through the winter? Well, squirrels are different than people, but let me show you what happens with Rocky. His food in a cage inside a lab can stay constant all year long. But because of his genetic coding, even Rocky will start to gain some weight when the sunlight starts to go down and he has a decrease in activity because he's in a cage. It doesn't go up to the same extent it would if he was in the wild, but it does go up a little bit, and then eventually it comes back down to a baseline. All right? So that's my little talk today about how people spend their life hibernating by doing prolonged sitting, decrease in activity, and going on chronic low-calorie diets. The next talk is going to be on something called metabolic multitasking, the ability to lose weight or lose fat and gain muscle at the same time. And I'm going to give you some ideas that were shared with me from Dr. Jay Tita. He's an expert at this, and I'll be able to share it with my audience as well. All right, take care, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.